Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we have with us Amy Toth. Amy is here to tell us the truth about chronic pain, the strategies that work for chronic pain even when nothing else does. I'm so excited to have you here, Amy. We had a little bit of a struggle getting started, but now we can see you, and it's just great.
I have to say, technology is clearly not my zone of genius.
I can so relate to that. But I'm glad that you made it.
Yes, thank you. I'm very, very excited to be here. The more times I can share, the better.
Yeah, and you have such an important topic to talk about. But how did you get started? Do you suffer from chronic pain yourself?
Actually, no, but I've been a physical therapist for over 20 years. And, I've worked with a lot of people who are in, chronic and persistent pain. And I think it's kind of come about out of a combination of being very stubborn and also still being like a little bit of a nerd. I came out of school, I was all excited because, I've wanted to be a physical therapist since I was like in 7th grade. And so, I was going to go out and heal the world. I noticed, I was helping a lot of people, but there was this certain kind of group of people that even though I did all the stuff I learned in school, it wasn't helping. And oftentimes it seemed to make things worse. And me being stubborn, I refused to accept that there was nothing I could do to help these people that have the chronic and persistent pain. So that's when I went back into kind of nerd mode and really just dug into the science and the research and all of that. And then that is all kind of morphed into where I'm at today.
And that is?
Oh, I'm still a physical therapist, so I still practice in the clinic, but I have also developed the chronic pain recovery method, which is an online program that helps people move out of persistent pain and start feeling like themselves again.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. How does that work?
It works and the way this is different than a lot of other programs and to be honestly, mainstream medicine is we're hitting more of the underlying, kind of more of the root causes of persistent pain. Because when you've had pain for more than 6 months or so, it's really no longer just the structure. So it's not just the joint or the muscle or the spine that is the primary source of pain. You have changes that have occurred in how your nervous system is processing messages and responding to messages that are keeping this kind of heightened sensitivity, this pain cycle going. So my program addresses those kind of underlying nervous system changes that are really kind of the root behind kind of what keeps you in pain.
Really interesting. So how does that work?
It's fascinating. It's there's kind of 2 steps to it. So there's what I call the nervous system regulation piece, which addresses more of kind of some of the foundational, I guess you could call them skills that you kind of need to have to kind of, everyone's kind of heard of the fight or flight state. Like, if a bear is suddenly in front of you, you have to decide, are you going to stay there or are you going to go? When you're in chronic pain, your nervous system is kind of stuck in that fight or flight. So we use some of the regulation techniques to help move it out of that fight or flight state and calm things down. So like sleep, kind of focusing on sleep quality is a huge one. Working on movement, but not like, let's go to a step aerobics class movement, but like you just need to move your body, but you need to move it in a way that isn't too intense and isn't going to flare up all of your symptoms. And then I think the one thing that I incorporate that isn't necessarily very often incorporated is play. Like, you need to have fun. You need to reconnect to the things that make you you. And the bonus of that is doing those things releases hormones into your system that calm your nervous system down and kind of help move you out of that fight or flight stage. Then there is the more of like the retraining or reprogramming aspect of it. And that I use, there's one group that has developed an app to kind of basically, it's kind of like brain games, but with a more, really much more specific purpose that looks at basically retraining how your brain and your body are communicating. Because when you've had persistent pain, that kind of communication channel just kind of gets messed up.
Wow. I
The
know
science,
people, this is like so novel to me.
but yes, the science behind it. I mean, one, it's fascinating. And it is. And I would say the science has been out for, well, first of all, none of this was around. I graduated from school in 1999. None of this information was around, like at that point. Like the extent of what we knew was like pain travels in this like pathway in the spinal cord, and like that was about it. But probably since like late 2000s, 2010, there's been kind of an explosion on the research of now really understanding kind of what's going on. The challenge now is translating that knowledge into treatments that are useful and effective and that can be, and also the biggest challenge right now is getting the message out. I read somewhere, and I can't remember where, that it takes an average of like 17 years for like new like information or techniques or like procedures to kind of trickle from we've learned about it, we now know how it works, to more kind of mainstream treatment and medicine. So I'm hoping we're kind of starting to get towards the tail end of that trickle down, but that's kind of part of my purpose and my mission is to kind of start spreading the word. Because I mean, there's no test that you can do necessarily to like assess, this part of the nervous system. A lot of providers don't know about it. But I truly believe that it is kind of like the missing link to really start getting a handle on this problem.
Does it work for all kinds of chronic pain? Like if you have chronic fatigue syndrome, that's like one thing,
Yes.
but if you have arthritis, is it something else, or are they all?
Good question. The more they do, for most part right now, we think it's pretty much good for almost all types. Because they do more and more. Definitely, I think, if there's pain involved with the chronic fatigue, but definitely with conditions like fibromyalgia, complex regional pain syndrome, even with like some hypermobility conditions like Ehlers-Danlos, definitely just with any old kind of like regular, so to speak, arthritis, back pain, neck pain, joint pain. There's been multiple studies that look at it in multiple joints, whether it's shoulder, whether it's knee, has been found to be effective. And they're even finding it more like in conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, where it's traditionally thought that really that is more of kind of an inflammatory process, and that's where the pain comes from. There have actually been some recent studies that are showing that that's not necessarily coming from the inflammation, that there's a completely separate kind of pathway in which this pain process is going, that would also be affected by using some of these techniques.
Oh, but you're amazing me.
It's fascinating, and it's mind-blowing, but it's also our, healthcare is we're really good at treating symptoms. Like, you come to me and your shoulder hurts, I can take an x-ray, I can tell you whether you have arthritis. And historically, we have kind of made, your whatever your imaging is, whether it's an x-ray or an MRI, has kind of been like, if it shows this, then we know that you're going to have pain and this is why it hurts. Because they're kind of equating the structure or the anatomy or the tissue as being the primary source of the pain. And what we're really starting to find out is at around the 6-month mark of having had pain pretty consistently is when your nervous system starts to make these adaptations. And that's the point at which, whatever is going on in your joint, for the most part, has probably healed or has been, the symptoms have been treated. And it's really these underlying changes in the nervous system that are perpetuating the pain continuously. And then if you kind of come from the back end and start addressing some of those changes, then we start seeing the pain change.
Oh, so it's kind of like a much better alternative to like pain medications that people get on and have
Yes.
all kinds of other problems.
Yeah, because again, those are treating the symptom, but they're not really getting at why do you still have that pain to begin with.
Right.
So yes.
It seems like if you take a pain medication, it's not retraining your brain
Right.
necessarily, but it is in some ways. It's retraining your brain because it's blocking signals,
Yeah.
and that's, I think, maybe where the addiction part comes in. I'm just kind of
Yeah. And I
spitballing
think,
here, and it's like,
yeah. And I think the other thing, and I haven't looked into the research behind it, but I know, like, if you look at depression, there's been some talk of like, yes, the medications are helpful because they block whatever receptors that keeps like the serotonin, so the serotonin keeps floating in your system. But
mhm,
the caveat being, if you have all of this floating in your system, then your body's not going to think it needs to produce anymore. So it's actually going to, like, does it actually long term create its own problem? And I know with some pain medications, it's well known that prolonged use can actually increase your sensitivity to pain. So it's helping, but sometimes it also kind of creates a little bit of its own problem. And I mean, another thing, I mean, I don't think, but I also have a little bit of the soapbox of, the opioid, yes, there was the opioid crisis, which was not a good thing, but we have gone so far the other direction that we now have providers scared to do anything. So they've kind of just abandoned this whole group of people where for many people at this point in time, like, the medication is their lifeline, like, good or
right.
bad, like, it is what it is. And I think we're doing so many of these people a disservice in general, but also in specifically by just all of a sudden saying, well, these medications are bad for you, so you need to quit taking them. What are you going to replace it with? Like, you gotta, but I've heard of lots of people just kind of being cut off cold turkey. And I just like, it's just horrible.
That is really horrible, but it's encouraging that you have a system that can take people that are in chronic pain and actually fix the root problem, which is
Yes.
brain chemistry and
Yeah. Yep.
uh,
Yep. And kind of how and it's literally like at the like cellular level of how, of like what channels are there in the cell membrane and which ones are opening and allowing certain things to happen. And it's kind of crazy how doing so, yeah, kind of coming at it from a, kind of trying to sneak in kind of under the radar, so to speak, just kind of has this like trickle down effect. It also, I mean, it is it is very challenging because I think one of the, people who are in pain have been through a lot. They have seen a lot of people. They have seen a lot of providers. They have tried a lot of pills. They have tried a lot of procedures, many of which at best were not helpful, at worst made things worse. A lot of providers don't always treat people in persistent pain the best. So one of my biggest challenges is kind of fostering the hope that there is something that works, and also gaining trust, because so many people have just not had good experiences with people in the healthcare field. And while I have been in the clinic for 20 some years, right now they're just seeing me online. So like, why are you trusting this person that you saw, online, kind of a thing. So that has been my greatest opportunity. We'll call it that.
Wow. And you have something that you offer people, and you also have a workshop that you do. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about those things.
Yes. One thing I have in my work with people is, who have persistent pain. Like, life is hard. It can be hard to get out of bed and just like take care of yourself and the basic things you need to do in any given day. So it can be really hard to stay consistent with any kind of either self-care or workout routine or anything. So I have created a guide that is 3 things that you can do basically to kind of ease what hurts or to help your pain, even on days that you don't want to get out of bed. So these are things that you can do literally laying in bed, that have research has shown will release hormones or cause other processes to go on that help calm, soothe the nervous system, and decrease pain. And then I do run at least once a month goes over this concept of the nervous system as kind of being an underlying cause, in more detail, so that and in a way that like is easy to understand. I'm not using like, big words. I'm kind of using analogies of things. So you can really kind of start to wrap your mind around it, because it really is like a mindset shift from there is something wrong, like with my joints, there's something wrong with my body, it is broken, it is not going to get better, versus, well, actually, a lot of this is just my nervous system is a little bit sensitive, and that, like, I can work with that.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how much your brain chemistry dictates how you feel, what you think about, how your joints
Yes.
react. It just like your mind is so powerful, and it really can heal you of anything. It
Yes.
wants its goal is to keep you going.
Yes,
So,
that's kind of the irony, because your brain's its whole purpose is to keep you safe, and somehow it thinks that these changes that it makes when you've been in persistent pain, it's doing them it believes it's keeping you safe. And we're just trying to kind of teach it and remind it that actually, no, this hasn't been working out so well for us. So we want to kind of try a new way. And and promising, like, you're still going to be safe. But we just need to think about this kind of a little bit different way.
yeah, yeah. So people can get in touch with you to take your master classes, and what kind of
Yes.
people would want to? I assume that,
Um,
somebody that's in chronic pain, but
yes. I mean, pretty much any kind of persistent, it could be arthritis, it could be, neck pain, back pain, fibromyalgia, it could be something that just hasn't even been, necessarily diagnosed. But it has been like, unfortunately, pretty consistent, not, discomfort or pain for probably 6 months-ish is kind of like the initial cutoff. But some other things that that you can kind of tell that the nervous system is probably part of your problem. Like, if you if your pain level changes when you're more stressed, or if your pain is kind of started in one area, but is really kind of starting to spread to other areas, or it kind of changes. One day it might bother you in your hip, the next day it might bother you in your knee. Those are all kind of some signs that there's probably a nervous system component to kind of what is going on with your pain level. Plus I just think it's fascinating and interesting. So even if you don't have pain, you should listen to it because it is pretty interesting. And like there's a new, like either you or someone you know likely will unfortunately experience this, because I believe it's 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 people in the world will experience chronic or persistent pain. And in the United States specifically, new cases of chronic pain outnumber new cases of depression, new cases of diabetes, or new cases of high blood pressure. So it's a problem. That
That's a
there are
big problem,
solutions.
because those
Yes.
other 3 that you just mentioned are like, the numbers are
Yes.
astronomical.
Yes. And that unlike the other ones, there's really no good protocol or treatment necessarily plan for. So I think they found at least 2/3 of those new cases are still dealing with the issue, a year later. So yes,
And if you're not suffering, somebody you know probably is.
yes. And again, the various you can kind of understand, they're not being lazy. And it's often called like the invisible illness because people will look just fine. But you have no idea kind of what's underneath all of that.
Yeah, I have a really good friend who she suffered from a neck injury and she looks fine,
Yeah.
but she struggles like every single day just to do the basic things.
Yeah.
And another friend who had back pain, and same deal. In fact, she had pain patches that
Mhm.
caused her to lose a large portion of her intestines and
Ooh.
almost died because she'd been on them for so long. And doctors don't monitor you. It's really up to you to
Yeah.
stay in touch with them, even though they're prescribing these incredibly powerful drugs
Yeah.
to you. It,
Yeah.
to me, that seems
Yeah.
a little odd.
I say the system is not, does not serve people with pain well. And a majority of it is not out of any malice. I think it's more out of, I don't necessarily want to say ignorance, but lack of like doing what they know and that doesn't work, not sure what to do next, other than if we can give this to you so you feel a little bit better, we'll just kind of see how that goes for a while.
Yeah, I struggled with neck pain when I was much
Mm.
younger. It was before chiropractic really started gaining
Oh, yeah.
momentum in the United States. I'd fallen
Hmm.
on my neck, and I still suffer from problems with it when I'm under stress. My neck will just like
Oh,
it gives me a headache. It's just excruciating.
yeah.
Um, but I would go to the doctors, and I went to the doctor the first time and they like slapped me down on the board with the head thing, and because they were afraid I'd broken my neck.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
hadn't, but it didn't mean that there wasn't an injury there. So they just
Yes.
gave me, opiates and sent me on my way.
Yeah.
And you
And I
can't
mean,
live on that stuff. And it
no.
doesn't really help.
Well, as I say, I mean, opiates have their time and place. Like in your instance, acute injury for a couple of weeks to really help manage the symptoms so that you can do the movement, do the stretches, do the exercises that you need to restore things. That's what after you have a total knee surgery, after you have a total hip, like that's what they're intended for. Unfortunately, it went haywire and now they're kind of going really too far the other way. There's a time and a place, and if we would just kind of respect that time and place, um
Mhm.
then they do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. I agree totally. And I've met, my own mom. She had surgery for something or another, and she's like, well, I'm not going to take the pain medication. It's like, well, yeah, you should take the pain medication. That's what it's for.
Yes.
You're not going to get addicted if you just do it for a short period of time and you stay in contact with your doctor and you do it the way it's prescribed. When you start getting into trouble is when you self-prescribe and you self-medicate and you don't know what you're doing, and then you end up in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Like my mom just had her second hip replacement a couple of months ago, and I'm like, you do, like, take your, like, for the first 2 weeks, you need to take the medication the way they tell you to, because that's what's going to help you get up and get moving and do the things you need to do to recuperate faster. And nowadays there is usually a definite cutoff. Like after 2 weeks, you really should be transitioning, onto these other lesser things. So like I said, it's got a time and a place. And if you respect that, it works great.
Absolutely. So how can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So I am on social media, of course. The easiest, probably Instagram, is the Amy Toth. So TheAmyToth. And then, or email. I am amy@amytoth.com. So that one's pretty easy. And on Instagram, you will find the link in my bio that links to the guide for the 3 things to kind of ease what hurts even when you can't get out of bed.
Perfect. So what's the one thing you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Hope that there is, for any of you who have been dealing with chronic persistent pain, there are things out there, and there are people and providers out there who understand how this works and have techniques to help you. Unfortunately, you have to search a little harder to find them. There is no like national directory, but they are out there. So if you're working with a provider that is not clicking and you're not feeling heard, try somebody else. It's time to move on to the next.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an incredible amount of information for a group of people that struggle to be heard, and just the conversation, I think, provides hope for so many.
That's been one of my frustrations in general, is how so many people are brushed off or not listened to, and that's again part of the reason why the current system isn't working. And I could talk about this stuff for hours. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the U World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the U World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.